Real quick, I'd like to give a massive shout out to all the homies on Patreon who chose to support the cult and help keep the lights on. If you want more information on how to support the channel and get your name up here with these fucking chads, check out the video description below. All right. Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to do an Affliction DPS guide. I'll go over everything from talents, gears, consumables, rotation, and everything else. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've recently been playing Affliction in my guild since we rotate who does curses, and on my weeks I just go as Affliction, and I'm having a fucking blast. Even though the DPS is lower than Destro, you really still can pump, and I think the difference from a knowledgeable Affliction Warlock playing correctly versus one who's sad and just bitching about having to be Affliction is paramount. During these past few times playing, I've noticed there's a little finesse to playing Affliction in comparison to Destro Warlock, where we just spam Shadow Bolts all day. So yeah, that's what this video is. I hope you enjoy it, and before we begin, please just scroll down like not even a half a fucking scroll wheel and hit that big ass red button for me to subscribe to the channel, because you love me and I love you. Also hit the comments for any questions, or just head over to my stream where I stream all types of Warlock content on Twitch at twitch.tv/CrixVibes. All right, let's get started. Before we begin, allow me to touch on the importance of, or lack thereof, bringing in an Affliction Warlock to your raid. To keep this part short, currently in tier 6 content, the utility from Shadow Embrace is just not needed, nor is the Blood Pack stamina buff from the Imp. Thus, the only reason you'd bring in Affliction Warlock is for Malediction, for the 3% more on Curse of Elements. And only if you're kind of like in a parsing guild do you really need this. A majority of the people are trying to go as fast as they can in their raids, whereas you could just have an Affliction Warlock go Destro and make up that damage difference. And that's also only if you have a lot of casters, right? But what about the new Sunwell raid launching soon? Well, that's where my answer changes. Drastically, actually. Not only do we plan to run an Affliction Lock in Sunwell, but I also implore you guys to do this as well. Obviously, Malediction is going to buff your casters, but more importantly, Shadow Embrace is actually very helpful in Sunwell, as the bosses hit ridiculously hard, and that 5% physical damage reduction is actually a must in my opinion. Not only that, but the extra stamina from Blood Pack is pretty big as well, no matter what group comp you're stuck with. Now, onto the video. First thing I want to talk about is one of the most important things when it comes to pumping as an Affliction Warlock, and that's what group comp you're in. We all know that Affliction single target is not as good as the Destro counterpart. However, just because it's not, doesn't mean that we can't put out respectable damage. As for the comps, a perfect comp for an Affliction Warlock is a typical Warlock group like this. 2 Destros, 1 Aff, Boomy, and Ellie. Now, I know you don't see many Afflictions get this group, but let me tell you that if you do happen to luck out and get the Big Dig Pumper group, it feels amazing. Especially if you get the ultimate Affliction goal, Double Lust. Now, it goes without saying that this is the best group for Affliction, and you'll find out a large majority of the top Affliction parses are in this group. Yay for Warlock parsing, right? But what about the other groups? Are we doomed if we're not in the Warlock group? To which I say absolutely not. This is the next best group you can get, and is far more common for Affliction Warlocks out there. The Mage group, aka the Pumper group. In this group, you typically get a Shadow Priest and a Resto Shaman. And let's not forget it, the Mage group, it typically gets at least 1 Lust. Now, of course, they don't make up for the Boomy and the Ellie Shaman, but this combo is nothing to scoff at. The Resto Shaman still gives you the 101 spell power totem and Wrath of Air, and you get Mana Tide, and of course the Shadow Priest is funneling you mana throughout the encounter. Now, of course, we can live tap, so you may not think the Shadow Priest is the best trade-off, and you're right, it's no Boomy. However, that mana return actually feels amazing, and it's better than being in the next group, which is the Healing group. Group 5 is a little more rough depending on your raid. This comp is typically stacked full of healers in the Affliction Lock, or the prop pally you and 3 healers. You better hope that one of them is a Resto Shaman, so you can at least get your 101 spell power from the Wrath of Air totem. Other than that, you're kind of stuck, bud. You generally will never get Lust in this group, even if you do luck out and get that Resto Shaman, and you're more or less there quite literally as a pure support spec. Which leaves the last group, the worst group, and the group you only go to if your raid leader hates you, and that's the Tank group. This is a very rare occasion that you don't see too often, but some guilds still run their Affliction Warlock in the Tank group for Blood Pact. I'm not here to tell you what not to do or what to do, but yeah, it pretty much sucks for you. And if you're in that group, then you're a better man than I am, because you have absolutely no support in this group. Literally the worst damage you could possibly do, and I wouldn't wish this group comp for any Warlock. But at the end of the day, you are a utility spec, remember. Next up, we'll talk about Curse priority. This should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Curse Elements should be your first button you press when you start a boss. Literally, like the second the encounter starts, you press Elements. I know it sucks that we can't Doom, or even more so, amplify Curse your Dooms. But once again, this is really the main reason why we're in the raid in the first place, so don't be a scumbag. Don't put up an Agony and say, oh, I'll just put Elements up afterwards. Don't Doom and make them wait. Put up Curse of Elements and remember that no matter how much you want to Doom, that you'll actually do more damage if you were to Elements, so just do it. As for Curse of Doom and Agony, currently in tier 6, you can and should be amplifying your Curse of Doom and putting it up on an Illidari Council, preferably on the Mage ad, unless you guys are turn and burning it because you want to put Curse of Elements up to help your other casters out. More than not, your Dooms will get off for some free damage, but every now and then he'll be immune, but that's just RNG. You can and should amplify Curse Doom on Illidan as well at about 68%. We do this because he's supposed to go up in the air at 65%, but that's more like around 65%. I've seen him go up earlier and even later, and remember, you want to put up a fresh Corruption and a Siphon Life on the boss as well as Doom, all before he flies up into the air. Then also going into the next phase, you're free to Agony or 2 off second Fire Elemental add depending on how fast your guild kills the first Fire Elemental add, after which you just put up Curse of Elements. As for the trash packs, this is where it's up to you. I typically elements 2 mobs, X and Skull, or if Skull will die fast, then X and a third target. You can put up Agonies here if you like. Just know that while it is more damage for you, it's more damage for the raid if it was Curse of Elements. To be honest, what I suggest is all your Warlock's first global or 2 should be Curse of Elements on trash mobs, so that the beefier the trash mobs have it, and take more damage from all your casters. Like I said, that's all up to you though. Next up, let's briefly touch on talents and specs, because as how you spec actually matters quite a lot. First off, I'll touch on the unstable Affliction build. This build excels extremely early game T4 when you have literally no gear. I'll be honest here and tell you that you should never be this spec anymore. It's phased out in my opinion with how easy it is to get gear and get out of that dead zone. Even more so, I've recently rerolled to Alliance for the Guild Fusion in preparation for Wrath of the Lich King, and I didn't even take this spec at all. I just went straight into SM Ruin, which is the next spec we'll talk about. But to end on an unstable Affliction, I'd suggest not really using it unless you're in a guild that's progressing through very early game, which is extremely rare. The next build is the SM Ruin Affliction build, or Contagion Ruin. This is the spec I am every week, and I'll only change it when Sunwell comes out for Shadow Embrace. Which while we're here, you might be asking why I only put 2 points into it. Well, simply put, 2 points are in it because there's nowhere else really to put those 2 points, and because your raid should not be needing that extra 3% physical damage reduction. We haven't needed it at all, even progging through tier 6. I will say that a lot of times with Affliction, your build isn't your choice, and your raid leader can tell you to take Shadow Embrace, which if so, that's out of your hands, and simply take the 2 points out of Imp Firebolt and 1 out of Contagion and slap it into Shadow Embrace. We'll end this part of the video by saying Imp Firebolt, while letting your Imp attack, of course, if he lives, is a massive DPS increase from anywhere between 75 to 100 DPS depending on if he lives, which could be a video in itself. Which while we're here on that, let your Imp attack. As soon as a fight starts, send him in. There's min-maxy tips on how to keep him alive more on bosses, but you'll need to check out the Warlock Discord for that one because I'm shit at it. The link will be in the description. But yeah, anyways, continuing with the talents. The 1 point in Contagion also buffs your Corruption and Seed by 1%. I only bring this up for those of you watching right now that just found out about it, so maybe you can persuade your raid leader like I did to let you drop the very much unneeded 3 points in Shadow Embrace. Side note, you may have heard me mention earlier, but once Sunwell launches, I'll more than likely run full 5 points in Shadow Embrace because Sunwell bosses hit much harder than anything we've dealt with before. More on that in a future video. Also in Sunwell, the Imp will be remain phase shifted and passive for most of the time, as its stamina from Blood Peck is actually very helpful. In terms of some flex points, Improved Agony and Amplified Curse are both super ultra niche in tier 6, since you should be applying Curse of Elements most of the time. These points are here for Council and Illidan, which we touched on in the previous section. Like I said, super niche talents, and they're not wrong if you want to put those in Shadow Embrace. Which brings me to the next and most important part, your rotation. It goes as follows. Put Curse of Elements up and make sure it's up 100% of the time. It's literally your first cast. After the curse is up, put up Corruption. It is very important to keep Corruption up as close to 100% uptime you can without clipping it. Clipping means that you're reapplying the dot before the previous one wears out. Do not do this. You must get full value out of your dots. Anyways, after Corruption, I put out a couple Shadow Bolts to get ISB up on the target. Now this doesn't always take 2 Shadow Bolts, and sometimes another Warlock gets lucky and crits first bolt, and then ISB is up. Once you see ISB up on the target, then apply Siphon Life as Siphon Life snapshots. Note that another Warlock in your raid can get ISB up before you, so it's suggested to use a weak ore to help better keep track of ISB. I'll have one listed below in the description and the comments if you want it. Which leaves us to the last part of the video, gearing, which sadly isn't too exciting since it's quite literally the same gearing as your Destro counterparts, with the addition of this trinket, the Ash Tongue Talisman of the Shadows, which gives you 20% chance to grant you 220 spell power for 5 seconds with absolutely no ICD. I've literally seen this pop back to back 6 times at one point with it overlapping. Like, this has some crazy RNG chances to be nutty. That being said though, it's not suggested to use this on all bosses, but rather the beefier trash elites and Illidari Council, as you should be trying to keep up Corruption on most if not all the adds. Looking ahead to the Sunwell raid, the only boss that I'd use this on is Twins, as you should be keeping Corruption on both bosses. Even though the second boss heals back up, it's still a single target DPS increase since Nightfall procs. As for the gemming side of things, it remains the same as the Destro counterpart, using 2 purple glowing whatever gems to activate your meta gem. The meta gem is Chaotic Skyfire Diamond, and then stockpile those plus 12 red spell power gems while using an orange crit or spell power, or if you're watching this in phase 5, then there'll be the 5 haste 6 spell power gems to fulfill any socket bonuses that offer 4 to 5 spell power. Well homies, that's it for this one. I always feel like I'm forgetting something, and I really hope I'm not. Leave me a comment below if I did, or if you have any questions at all. You can also stop by the stream whenever to ask me live and get an answer right away. I stream 6 days a week over on Twitch at twitch.tv/CrixVibes. Come check it out and meet some new homies. We just vibe out and pump. And lastly, if you please hit that red subscribe button for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Cheers and good luck.